That's when the shooting erupted.
A petition's been started calling on the advertising industry to clearly label when a modelling photograph has been airbrushed. The campaign by the Girl Guiding Association has the support of various celebrities, including Mylene Klaas, Davina McCall and also Alicia Dixon.
Any more on that coming in?
We have had a few more, yes. I haven't got them to hand at the moment, but we've had lots of people
commenting. We're going to airbrush those comments.
Most people are saying that they would like it to be clearly labelled because they don't think it sets a good role model, actually, particularly for teenage girls, because they look at those photos and they think, I can look like that. They think that that look is achievable. I suppose people are just afraid of reality. They're afraid of real life the way it is. We're going to look at life as reflected in the front pages of the papers now. The Mail, first of all, it has... For outlining your plans today, the Minister thinks all that's a good idea. What do you think? Charlotte's standing by to take your emails as ever, and she just loves to hear from you. At Sky Charlotte, which is the tweet, or the email is? The email is news@sky.com. Nearly got you there. Didn't you? OK, nearly got you there, but here she is now that she is awake. Here she is with the rest of the news, and it's cloning which leads the rest of the news. It is indeed. Thanks, Amy. Yes, it's been confirmed that meat from the offspring of a cloned cow has entered the food chain in the UK. The Food Standards Agency. An employee of a beer distribution company who shot dead 8 colleagues was facing a disciplinary hearing at work in the American state of Connecticut. Omar Thornton had previously complained of racial harassment at work, and he'd also been asked to resign. He killed himself after police arrived at the scene. Right, now we're going to talk about airbrushing, because the Girl Guides, there's a campaign by the Girl Guides, and they're saying they want a ban on all airbrushing advertising aimed at children. And you were a chief Girl Guide for the whole of Britain, weren't you? What were you? Something along those lines. Yes, you were very high up in the Girl Guides. I got my Baden-Powell trefoil badge. Indeed. Why are they calling for this? They basically say that it's setting an unrealistic goal for teenage girls who will look at these photos and think that they can recreate that look, that that's a look they should be aspiring to, when in fact, if they were labelled as being airbrushed, then they would realise it's not a true image. OK, well, we're going to debate this with a magazine editor after this report from Jane Chilton. Well, the rights and wrongs of all of this, I'm joined now by 3 women who are heavily airbrushed every morning before they come on this programme, and Marie O'Riordan, or Mary O'Riordan, forgive me, Mary, who is a former editor of Marie Claire. As well. For or against? Well, I think airbrushing within reason is perfectly acceptable, and I think when people object to it, they're underestimating the intelligence of the reader. I mean, we've all lived with airbrushing since advertising began, and I think very often it's politicians jumping on a bit of a media bandwagon. You're selling a lie, that's what you're doing. Well, look, how do you legislate against it, though? Because I think when we buy a glossy magazine, we know we're buying into fantasy. Fashion is about selling a dream, it's about fantasy. And we all partake in it, and we all, we upload our photos onto Facebook, and we make sure that we get the best version of ourselves onto Facebook. Yes, and airbrushing within reason. Personal vanity, I think, is fine. I'm all for that. That's OK. But not when it's selling me something. It's not saying I should look like this, and I don't. Could I throw it out to our panel of ordinary housewives here this morning and see what you think? Housewives. Lucy, you're at an age now where you can't get away with the girly tag anymore. Why not? Why ever not? For you this week. What do you think, Lucy? I can understand, when you go into a magazine that maybe you might like to be airbrushed, but what's your view?
Well, it's just done so heavily now. It's almost like it's very uncommon to see anything else but. So you're just used to that image constantly. Like you said about personal improvement, loads of people use Photoshop and improve pictures of themselves with the red eye and the shininess on Facebook. And this is taken to a whole new extreme in these glossy magazines. And yes, it is selling an image, and it is sort of false reality. But yes, I think there's just 2 arguments, and it's very difficult. You're OK with it, in short? I'm OK with it, in short. It doesn't bother me. It's like Mari was saying, I think if you're intelligent to know that that's what's happening, everybody knows that airbrushing goes on, and, it's aspirational. So I look at something and think, well, do you know what, I might quite like to look like that. I know I never will do, but you have to aspire to something, and it happens, so... You just understand Everybody's aware of it. I mean, I think some magazines have taken it too far, and we had Cherylgate lately, where she was advertising a hair colour, and it turned out that the hair wasn't real, that was demonstrating the product. So I think that is silly. I mean, that was done by a particular hair company. And I also don't agree with somebody being a size
16 and suddenly being slimmed down to a size 10. But to be honest, they are the exceptions. That is
what I
very
get
rare.
are size 10s being used to advertise size 16 clothes. I think these outsize adverts are a joke when they have these size 10 and 12 girls trying to pretend they're 16
well,
and 18.
they're classed as plus size, aren't they, when that's a
right,
normal size woman. So a plus size model now becomes a 10 or a 12, which is an average girl's size.
I mean, that's a whole other
It's not plus at all.
debate, though. I mean, I think we mustn't forget the underlying issue here, which is, you know, trying to protect young girls, trying to encourage them to concentrate on inner development and inner beauty and self-esteem.
Yes, well then how can you be for airbrushing? Because, I mean, you are an agony aunt as well at the Times, is that right?
That's right.
So in a way, you are gamekeeper turned poacher.
Well, I disagree, because I think if you want to talk about young girls' self-esteem, you have to talk about inner beauty, and I think these sort of debates actually encourage narcissism. I mean, the Girl Guides Association has now jumped on this sort of media debate, and when I was a Girl Guide, you concentrated on helping other people, and your self-esteem grew as a consequence of that. Whereas these debates encourage girls to really over-focus on their physical appearance, which I just think is wrong. So I think the debate is shifting and losing the underlying reason for why we should be concerned about it.
I'd like to speak to another Girl Guide.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting, you know, you were saying, obviously, you know, as intelligent people, we can look at these glossy magazines, we know we're buying into a fantasy, but I just wonder, for teenage girls, for example, and the type of magazines they buy, you know, they are seen as a bit more realistic, and I think maybe for them, when they're flicking through the pages, they wouldn't automatically think those are airbrushed. They might subconsciously think, you know, this is what I want to look like. Isn't there a danger from that point of view?
Well, in theory, yes, but I think fashion magazines have been around for a lot longer than these celebrity magazines, and they've always done airbrushing the same way that Hollywood, you know, we all go to a movie and we all want to look at pretty people in films. But the magazines that have really done the damage, I think, to self-esteem are the ones that point out flaws, and they say, oh, look at so-and-so on a beach.
From one extreme to the other,
yeah,
haven't they?
and they really criticise people for cellulite, they criticise them when they're looking at like a normal pregnant person, then they comment on the fact that they've lost their baby weight really suddenly. And they're the sort of damaging things, and they're the messages that are actually, I think, really affecting teenagers. Whereas I think that the airbrushing thing is a bit of a red herring.
Does it make any difference that you get Mylene Klass, Davina McCall and co lining up and saying, we are against this? I mean, I find this slightly laughable, because these girls, if anybody doesn't need a lot of airbrushing, it's these girls. But will their support add any weight, or does it add ridicule to the whole situation?
Well, I think quite a lot of those women partake in advertising themselves, and they're on, a lot of them are on lucrative cosmetic contracts, and they're airbrushed to hell. So I think there are companies that take it too far, but then there are brands like Dove, and they have restored reality back into fashion by actually shooting their campaigns with real women.
Yes.
LK Bennett are about to launch a Real Women ad campaign this winter. So I think the market does correct itself, and I think people are objecting to over-thinness or over-idealism, but there will always be an element of glossiness and idealised beauty.
I must say, the older I get, the more I'm in favour of it.
Yes,
I have
absolutely.
to say, which you may find yourselves if you ever have to experience
But
it.
if you get rid of airbrushing, I mean, you have very skilled photographers whose job it is to make their subjects look very good. I mean, I've been photographed, I'm sure you've all been photographed, where you've thought, wow, I look so much better in that photograph than I do in real life. So even if you got rid of airbrushing, there would still be an element.
No, I think there's a difference. I mean, I've seen examples where girls' legs have been lengthened and their thighs completely trimmed and things. I mean, you must have seen it.
Yeah, that's taking it. I think that is taking it a bit too far. But when I was an editor of Mary Claire, we were worrying more about skinny girls, making them look a bit more real. We would be actually adding inches, because we didn't really want to work with skinny models, but they were the models that were popular and fashionable at the time. But there is a trend away from that now. I think this reality thing is becoming fashionable, and a lot of the catwalk shows this season used a lot of older girls in different shapes. So I think it will correct itself.
Well, thanks, Mary, for your opinions on all of that. Mary herself is a Girl Guide. Charlotte was a Girl Guide. Looking at these other two, I somehow doubt it, somehow or other.
You'd be quite right as well, actually.
Yeah. How did he know?
They're naughty ones on the end, that's why.
So that's the airbrushing issue. Let us know your views, news@sky.com. We are now... Right, we're going to talk...
The Live Desk opens now. The cloned food debate rears its head once more, with confirmation illegal...